Hi class. In week 2 we'll be working with sources, and so I want to take a few moments to talk to you about what makes a good source. Some people think that if you find a book or an article that has something to do with your topic, well, that's a good source. However, that's not exactly true, and you'll see what I mean over the next few minutes as we talk a little bit more about what makes a good, solid source of information for your research. Remember, your paper is only as strong as the research that it's built on. So you want to have the best sources of information possible. Let's take a look. Characteristics of a good source. The first one is credible. It has to be a source that you can trust. For example, if you've ever seen any of those magazines like the National Enquirer or Star, that you can find it on the grocery store racks. There's a lot of articles in them about a variety of things, but nobody would really ever think of those as a good source. You can't really trust what they say. What you need to do is find one that is a trusted source, has credibility. One easy way to do that is to go to our library, and when doing a search, you'll see that right under the search box where you type in your keywords, there's a button that you can click for peer-reviewed. Peer-reviewed means that the article has been reviewed by a panel of experts before it is published. It's like it has the stamp of approval. Okay? It's from a credible source. Another example of working with sources and credibility. Many times people will see a website that they think, wow, this looks like an incredible website. I should use an article from this in my research. It looks very professional. Well, you have to be careful. I had a situation where a student used a source from a website, a .com, and in my looking at the article, I decided to find out a little bit more about the site, so I went to its homepage. And there, right on the front of the website, on that homepage, there was a disclaimer that explained that the website had been created by a college student, and in it the college student was sharing some of his interests, one of which happened to be history. And the article that my student used was a paper written by this other college student on a topic that he had to cover for his history class. That's not exactly a credible source. So when looking at sources, you have to do a little bit of digging. As I said, peer-reviewed sources in our library right away have the stamp of approval. If you're getting it from outside of the library, do some digging first. Find out about the author of the article. Does this person have background in the topic that they're talking about? Another example is an article a student of mine found on an immigration law. And she was thrilled. She says, this is exactly what I need. This article has it, and it's written by someone from a well-known university in this country. However, the student didn't read farther. She read the article, and she read the first line under it about the author being from a certain university. What she didn't read, the rest of it, was that particular professor, was not a law professor. In fact, he was an English professor who happened to just have an interest in certain hot topics around the country, and he had written some articles which were really just opinion pieces. And he really had no background in law, and he did mention that in his little bio. Again, you have to read a little bit more carefully. You don't want just someone's opinion. You need some facts, and you need them from a source that is expert in the field. So you want a piece of research that is credible. As for websites, probably if you're going to use them, a .gov, a .edu, or a .org are probably the best ways to go. A .com, anybody can put anything up there, and many times it can look great, but it's really not credible information. Unbiased. You want to use sources that are objective, that don't slant the facts. For example, what I mean for an example isn't, you want articles that are balanced as opposed to an article that may be slanted in such a way that the facts about a situation, only the bad things are shared, and the good is kind of like buried or not talked about, or vice versa. All the positives and none of the negatives admitted. Okay? That kind of source, uneven kind of source, shows bias, and it's not good. So what you want to do is look for articles that use facts, good solid facts. That's something that you can't deny, and also that they use those facts in a balance. There's the good and the bad admitted. It's, as I used to tell some of my students, think back to the old Dragnet movie with Aykroyd and Hanks, or one of the Dragnet series with Jack Webb or Ed O'Neill. The facts, ma'am, just the facts. That's the kind of sources you want. They're based on facts. Timely. You want to have a source that's fairly current, with the idea being that the fresher the information, the better. In some fields in particular, things change so rapidly, and probably the best examples are information technology, science, and medicine. What was true 6 months ago can have changed. There's new findings, there's upgraded technology. What was the best months ago has now been replaced. So it's always best to try to get the most current information possible. Try to get things that were published within the last 2 years and use those. That way, when you're sharing figures, facts, statistics, the reader can say, yes, this is something that's based on what happened 2 years ago, as opposed to, let's say, 5, 10 years ago, when clearly things could have changed since then. And that kind of dated information makes people start to doubt what you're trying to put across in your paper. Our last topic is relative. Our last characteristic, rather, is relevant. You might say, well, I'm not going to take a topic that is our source that has nothing to do with my topic. However, when we say relevant, what we're talking about is making sure that you have sources that help you to build a strong paper, or in the case of one, let's say, that's persuasive, to help you build a strong argument. For example, let's say that you are arguing in a paper that a college degree is needed today in order to get a well-paying job. Okay. A source that you use tells how many people are entering college this year. Okay. Well, the source talks about college and how that's, you might say, on your topic. You're talking about college to a degree, but is it relevant to your argument? Is it going to help you make a solid one? Your argument is that the education is needed to get a job at a certain pay level. Having a source that talks about how many students enter colleges in a certain year or over the last 5 years tells us nothing. It just tells us how many students are going into college. It doesn't help our argument in that it doesn't tell us how many of those graduated or went on to get high-paying jobs. Okay? So you need to find a relevant source, one that is in line with what you are writing about, and one, in the case of a persuasive paper, that's in line with what you are arguing. So, characteristics of a good source. It's credible, it's unbiased, it's timely, and it's relevant. That's just a quick look at characteristics of a good source. For the rest of it, look at this week's readings. Now, let's get started.